Hey, boys and girls, Squee913 here. Welcome to another session of Thoughts Behind the Wheel. So, I'm coming from the mall, actually. I had to stop by and return something. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, no, there goes my microphone. I love it. I love my girl, but she has a habit to buy things and then just return them. But, of course, she's not the one that returns them. I am, because I'm kind, considerate, and compassionate, and had nothing better to do. So anyway, where was I? Yes, I was walking out of the mall, and I saw a security guard trying to tell someone to move from the fire lane, and the person was getting all uppity. Now, this might be near and dear to my heart, because I used to have to do that as a mall security officer back in the day. And it strikes me as odd, you know, from a societal standpoint, that I could understand someone getting upset about something like for example, if I had told you that you can't take pictures at the mall, and you get upset because no one told you that. And that's true, that's not really common knowledge. I mean, you could find out if you wanted to, but most people don't sit there and think, oh, well, the mall, I can't take pictures. But you can't because, you know, they have no way of knowing if you're a professional shoplifter scouting out the area kind of thing. But I can understand someone getting upset about that because you might not have known, etc., etc., etc. But everyone and their little brother knows you don't park in the fire lane. It's giant red, yes, it's a giant red line on a curb that says fire lane, and you cannot drive without knowing what that means. You can't get your driver's license without that. So what always makes me, or strikes me as funny is that when I used to tell people things that they didn't commonly know they couldn't do, they were usually very polite about it. You know, if I told them, I'm sorry, you can't take pictures here, blah, 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 they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Oh, okay, sure. Or, I'm sorry, you know, you can't do whatever. And they'd be like, oh, okay. But when I try and tell them they can't do something they know they shouldn't do in the first place, then they start becoming combative. I don't understand this. You know you're in the wrong. Why would you argue? Just say yes and go. I know, it doesn't really bug me anymore because I don't deal with it, but I used to. Back in the day, it mystified me. Why would someone... And it's like a certain thing. I mean, like, you know for certain when you pull up to this person parked in the fire lane, they are going to get mad at you because they screwed up. It puts serious doubt in Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. I kid you not, because I swear it always happens. What is the uncertainty principle? Yeah, maybe I should explain that. Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Oh yay, it looks like we're going into science, aren't we? Well, back around, up until, you know, the 1920s, people believe, scientists had a theory, not all, but some, had a theory that, excuse me, that, you know, everything could be explained through science and mathematics. For example, using Newton's laws of gravity, etc., you could predict the placement of any large body in a relation to another large body, etc., etc. In other words, these rules would allow you to predict where any planet would be at any given time. And they thought that anything could be done like this. In other words, if we found the correct formula, we could predict anything, including human behavior, the future, everything. Everything was predetermined, and that through mathematics we could find out what that predetermination is. And a lot of people believed this for a very long time. Sounds a little silly, but up until Heisenberg proved it wrong, mathematics would almost kind of tend to lead people in that direction. Well, Heisenberg realized that this wasn't true, and I'll tell you why. But in order to tell you why, I have to go into quantum mechanics. Yay! I will try and make this as easy to understand as possible, because God knows it took me forever to understand it. Light comes in forms of waves, which means that the light you see from the sun is like a sound wave, just much, much faster. And someone once wondered, if waves always travel at the speed of light, and they travel at a finite speed, why doesn't the sun give off an infinite amount of energy? Look, I'm going to get very confusing here. The sun only gives off a certain amount of energy. Let's say 1 unit of energy per day. We can measure this, we know this, and tomorrow it'll give off another 1 unit of energy. And someone once asked, why doesn't it give off an infinite amount of energy? What's keeping the waves from only being released at a certain amount of time? Why isn't this giant ball of gas so incredibly bright that we can't see anything else? Because there's no limit to waves. At least there wasn't any at the time. Why doesn't it just have an infinite release of energy? So in order to answer this question, someone came up with the idea that light travels in little packets called quarks. Picture it like a marble. The sun releases a marble once per day. It can only release, or millions of marbles a day, whatever. But basically, let's say the sun is a giant bag of marbles, and the hole in the bag is only big enough to allow one marble out at a time. Therefore, all the marbles don't rush out all at once because the sun can only release so many marbles at one time, which is one. Got it? Everyone following me here? There's a bunch of mathematics that prove it or that give it weight that I don't even understand, so just take my word for it that this is what he found. The guy who found this. I don't remember his name. But, and he called these quarks. Like Quark from DS9. Quark. And quarks were funny because they behaved kind of like waves and kind of like particles. And I'm not going to go into today how that works, because that's a very long explanation, and I could explain later if you want. But just understand that a quark can behave like a particle, like a proton or neutron or any other particle, which is a piece of matter. So they both can behave kind of like marbles. Now, here is what he found out. Heisenberg, when he found out the uncertainty principle. When trying to measure the position of a very small marble, let's say, like a proton, he had to, in order to see where it is and see how fast it was moving, he had to use some sort of light wave to measure it. I mean, you can't, without some sort of light wave, you can't detect it. You can't detect anything. So you had to use light to see how fast it was going and where it was. But he found out, since light is actually made up of little quarks, which act kind of like particles, that light wave itself would hit the particle with the quarks, and the quarks would cause that particle to move in some direction that was completely undeterminable. In other words, think of it like this. You want to find out where a marble is in this circle. In order to find out where the marble is, you have to throw another marble, a quark, at it. And when the marble bounces off the first marble, you'll be able to tell, oh, that's where it is. However, by hitting the first marble with the second one, you move the position of the marble in some way that you can't determine. You have no way of knowing what direction that marble is going to get knocked into. So, in order to find out where it is, you have to move it. You can't, and basically, if you want to measure the speed of something, in order to measure the speed of something, the only way we've been able to measure the speed of anything ever was to tell how far it's traveled between point A and point B. In this instance, point A is the crest of one wavelength, and point B is the crest of another wavelength. You bombard it with two wavelengths, or more, and you see how fast it's traveled in between each wavelength. That's how you get its speed. Well, in order to measure its speed accurately, you would have to bombard it with more marbles. And the more marbles you hit it with, the further off course it's thrown. So he found out that you could accurately measure its speed, but not its position. Or you could accurately measure its position, but not its speed, because trying to measure both would throw it off. And he found out that by this very small act, by the simple means of trying to find out where something is, you are moving it in an unpredictable way, completely disproves the idea that we one day will be able to predict everything everywhere. So, basically, unless it's proven wrong, of course, there is no way to predict human behavior, etc., etc. We'll never know what's going to happen in the future of everyone everywhere. Because at the very least, that can never be determined. And if something so small on such a fundamental level cannot be determined, then, how can we determine, everything, everywhere? And in shorts, basically, nothing is certain, things are always uncertain, etc., etc. But the fact that every time you try and get someone out of a fire lane, they will argue with you, kind of throws doubt on this theory. That is an incredibly incredibly long way of making a point. But there you go. That's my point. Alright, guys. I will talk to you later. Adios.